And this is prescribed. That now onwards, it is this which has to be done. That is to say, religion very often has got a kind of an establishment, an institution, a framework, and in that framework a hierarchy of decision makers, and the top man has a final authority, and that authority is to be unquestioningly to be accepted. These are the aspects of religion. Religion sometimes allows you a possibility of going beyond all this and tells you that beyond religion there is a possibility of a spiritual experience in which the rituals, ceremonies, beliefs, dogmas do not count at all. But that element is, you might say, a limited element. And it is maintained that only a few individuals perhaps can be allowed to do it. Mostly people should not be led to that path. In some religions which have developed in India, there is a great room given in these religions, whether it's Jainism or Buddhism or Hinduism. All the three religions maintain that you can go beyond all the prescriptions, all the institutional arrangements, and you can attain to experience, and by experience you can realize the object of reality. But yoga, right from the beginning, maintains that by psychological methods, by the training of psychological faculties, that is why yoga is called practical psychology. It is a psychology which is applied. So, yoga is specifically that domain where psychological processes are analyzed, psychological processes are observed, and by the combination of psychological processes, it is proposed to develop such faculties, and by those faculties, reality can be experienced. So here there is no dogma, no belief only. Dogma is transcended, belief is transcended, and you are promised that the object which is placed before you can be realized in experience. And therefore, you arrive at a point where there is no question of the truth or veracity of the object of experience. Now, my understanding of the Veda is that Veda is primarily and fundamentally a book of yoga. It's a psychological book in which the truths of psychological powers are described after a lot of experimentation. These experiments also are sometimes described as yesterday we saw the colloquy between Agastya and Indra, where we find that Indra is approached by Agastya with a question and says, "Why do you obstruct me?" And then Indra explains why he is obstructing. He explains that you want by thought forces to reach the reality. But thought forces are not capable of knowing that reality. Therefore, I want you to take the help of Agni and me. We both will help you and take you to the field where experience can be obtained. Now, this is also a kind of a process by which experiment was done, and this experiment is also described in the Vedas. And if you study the Veda in its whole length and breadth, you will find many instances of these developments of yogis from one state to the other. Even the other passage which we read yesterday from Vishwamitra, it begins by saying, Prancham Yajjam Chakrama Vardhatam Gihi. It describes a certain end of a certain experience. Prancham Yajjam Chakrama, we have accomplished. So, and then he describes what kind of yajna was conducted, in which the entire development of Agni from the lowest level of material existence up to its supramental level, all that was pursued, and therefore all the knowledge was obtained while doing this yajna. It must have been a long yajna, in which yajna need not be so long in the terms of months and years, but whatever was described, ultimately at the end, Vishwamitra said, Prancham Yajjam Chakrama. It was accomplished according to him, and therefore the great knowledge which was obtained is described by Vishwamitra. It's a purely psychological process which has been described, how Agni evolves from the lowest level of matter through life processes, mental processes, and supramental processes, and how at the supramental level what was discovered. The bull is discovered, the dhenu is discovered, the immortality is discovered, and the son of him is discovered, Kumara, the individual reality which becomes universal. So some of the highest realizations are obtained. In fact, in the Ishavasya Upanishad, we have a description of the highest experience that the Veda has arrived at, because Ishavasya Upanishad is a very peculiar position. It is supposed to be the end of Yajurveda, and yet it is one of the oldest Upanishads. And in these 18 verses we get the most important elements of the Vedic yoga. And if you have there are two verses where it is said that he who sees himself in all and sees all in himself, and he who sees that one has become all, it is he, having seen oneness, kaha moha kaha shokaha, how can he have any grief? This is one of the highest experiences that we find in the Veda. And as Sri Aurobindo points out, it is in the supramental experience that reality is found as one reality, one in all in one, and one which has become all. All these experiences put together is a supramental experience. And that is the highest achievement that we find. If you put down all the experiences described in the Veda, ultimately all of them would end in this culminating experience. And this is the highest yogic experience. Now, this yogic process, therefore, does not have the necessity of a belief or dogma or rituals or ceremonies. And yet you find the entire Veda referring to yajna, to ceremonies, and to all the processes which are connected with religion. Sri Aurobindo points out that this is a result of a certain historical situation where religion is prominent in the society, and spiritual seekers or yogins have discovered their highest truths, and they want to convey these highest truths for those people who would like to follow not religion, but purely yogic processes. How to convey this? And therefore, Sri Aurobindo's answer is that Vedic language is a double-edged language. In the external aspect, it seems to be ritualistic and connected with that which addresses to the religion and to ceremonies and so on. And yet, fundamentally, whenever the veil is transparent or wherever the symbolism can be understood more clearly, you can clearly see it is a book of knowledge, a book of psychological knowledge and wisdom. This is what Sri Aurobindo states in regard to the language of the Veda, why language of the Veda is what it is. And that is why Sri Aurobindo says that the Veda, the internal meaning of the Veda was at one time reserved for the initiates. And those who were capable of entering into yoga, to them this meaning was conveyed. And because in due course of time, this aspect of yoga became weaker and the ritualistic aspect became stronger in due course of time, therefore the inner meaning of the Veda became more and more lost. From time to time, something of it survived and something of it was recovered, as in the Upanishads. But even when Upanishads recovered a good deal, even then, apart from the oldest Upanishads, we do not find a complete recapturing of the inner psychological yoga of the Veda. And there must have been still something still continuing in the cultural history of India, so that when we come to the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says that this is the yoga I gave to Vivaswan and then gradually it got lost. But now I am repeating it to you and giving it to you. But even after that exposition of the Gita, if you see the way in which Gita itself has been interpreted in several different ways, it is clear that there is a hesitation and that synthesis which was there in the Veda, synthesis which is there in Upanishads like Ishavasya Upanishad, and synthesis which is there in the Bhagavad Gita, that synthesis seems to have been lost. It is now, as Sri Aurobindo points out, it is now that so much is being collected together, and we have reached a time where a new synthesis is absolutely necessary. In fact, there is a very important statement of Sri Aurobindo where he says, we do not belong to the past dawns, but to the noons of the future. And in this time, we need to collect backward and forward and derive all that has gone in the past. Even the study of all the present conflicting systems of philosophy, religions, systems of yoga, and take all this into the further crucible of experimentation and come out with a new synthesis. This is the work, and therefore in that work, Sri Aurobindo says, revisiting the Veda is indispensable. If we want to create before the mankind a new synthesis which will be necessary for the present mankind, there this knowledge will be inevitable. And that is why Sri Aurobindo gives so much of importance to the study of the Veda and to study of the Veda in the inner meaning which was sought to be conveyed by the secret language which he has now discovered and given the keys about. Now what exactly then is this process of yoga, briefly speaking, that we find in the Veda? It begins by saying the first step in this yoga is aspiration.